are just human beings with personal politics and life experiences and biases and ideologies, just like you and me. We all know that, obviously, but for some reason they are intent on trying to gaslight us into thinking that they are not. Recently, members of the court have been going on the offensive, trying to convince America that they are sort of these ethereal beings, removed from the petty partisan politics that have come to dominate the rest of life. And not only that, they have also been claiming that it's an egregious insult to suggest that they could possibly have political commitments that affect them in any way whatsoever, to suggest they're mere mortals whose judgments are filtered through their ideology like everyone's are. Now, I should say this charm offensive, if you can call it that, it's more of a whining offensive, is not working. New polling from Gallup shows approval of the Supreme Court is down to just 40%. That is the lowest it's ever been in Gallup's tracking. And keep in mind, they started polling right after Bush v. Gore. Remember, this current court, this 6-3 court, 6 Republican appointees, 3 Democrats, is the product of the unprecedented, historically unprecedented, never happened before, total obstruction of President Obama's nomination of Merrick Garland, and then the election of Donald Trump, despite the fact that he lost the popular vote, and then the rushing through of Amy Coney Barrett to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg before her body was even in the ground. It is a Trump-McConnell court. That is simply a historical fact about the court's makeup. On top of that, there's also the fact that the court is very obviously hostile to the reproductive rights enshrined in Roe v. Wade and later in Casey. This upcoming turn, they will be hearing arguments in a case from Mississippi, which has basically banned abortion after 16 weeks, that could overturn Roe. And just keep in mind, this is a case they had no reason to take other than the opportunity to gut or overrule Roe. So we know what they're doing. Of course, just last month, the court, 5 of the 4 justices, all conservatives, failed to enjoin a blatantly unconstitutional law in Texas that prohibits nearly all abortions. For the last 30 days, it has been essentially impossible for women to secure an abortion in the second most populous state in the union. This is not a legal abstraction. This is a fact on the ground. There are women who are pregnant in Texas right now who cannot secure their constitutional rights. So yes, when you look at all that, I think it's not that surprising that a lot of people aren't super psyched about this court. But here's the thing. People's criticisms of the court are really landing. And so the justices are getting defensive. Yesterday, it was the right-wing justice, Samuel Alito, a man who is very clearly suffering from an acute case of Fox News brain, speaking at the University of Notre Dame Law School. Justice Alito lashed out at the critics of the court, particularly critics of the so-called shadow docket. Now, that's the process by which the Supreme Court decides emergency cases without revealing the reasoning. They don't issue, big decisions, right? Now, the shadow docket has always existed. The thing is that this court has massively expanded it and also used it in obviously ideological ways because they use it so inconsistently. For cases with huge stakes, like last month when access to abortion in Texas was cut off and 5 justices shrugged and said, nothing we can do. But we can all see what they're doing. Justice Alito, however, says it's not happening.
The catchy and sinister term shadow docket has been used to portray the court as having been captured by a dangerous cabal that resorts to sneaky and improper methods to get its ways. And this portrayal feeds unprecedented efforts to intimidate the court or damage it as an independent institution.
Now, to me, this is actually an encouraging development. First of all, fun trivia fact, shadow docket coined by a law professor who's a former clerk of John Roberts, not some crazy liberal. And intimidate the court is an interesting choice of words because it's really just criticism. The level of defensiveness here shows the criticisms of the court are really getting to them. They hear it. They know that the public perception of them is bad. And that's a good thing. Because guess what, Justice Alito? We live in a liberal democracy, and the court is part of the institutions of liberal democracy. Apparently, people like Sam Alito want lifetime tenure on the court with zero democratic accountability short of impeachment, which hasn't happened in more than 200 years. And along with all that, the power and the prestige and the lifetime tenure, they also don't want anyone to criticize them. Well, tough, buddy. That's not the way it works in this country, in a liberal democracy, in a free society. I'm sorry, but you're going to get criticized, and you deserve it. Justice Alito is not the only one with very, very thin skin. Just a few weeks ago, Justice Amy Coney Barrett gave a speech that was, in some ways, worse than Alito's. Alito at least had the guts to let his talk be promoted and recorded so people could see it. Coney Barrett did not inform the press ahead of her appearance, did not allow any audio or video recording. There are a couple of reporters present, so we do know some of what she said. Like, quote, "My goal today is to convince you the court is not comprised of a bunch of partisan hacks. Judicial philosophies are not the same as political parties. And the media, along with hot takes on Twitter, report the results of decisions. It leaves the reader to judge whether the court was right or wrong based on whether she liked the results of the decision." So there she is, Amy Coney Barrett, having walled herself off from criticism, complaining about misinterpretation and attacking the press while not allowing them to record the speech from behind this little fortress she's built. And here's the best part. Amy Coney Barrett stood there claiming the justices are not partisan hacks when she herself is on the court because Mitch McConnell shoved through her confirmation in near record speed in the last weeks before an election, having blocked a nomination in election year when a Democrat was around. Now, that's after he claimed, you couldn't confirm a new Supreme Court justice in election year when Merrick Garland was nominated. And you could say, in defense of Amy Coney Barrett, she can't control who nominates and confirms her. That's true. She can control where she appears and with whom she does. Take a close look at the photo here. There, who's that guy in the glasses? Oh my word, that is Mitch McConnell himself, sitting on the stage, approvingly looking on at Amy Coney Barrett, his crown jewel, the woman that he got confirmed. Next to her on stage, as she says, she is not a partisan hack at the celebration of the 30th anniversary of the opening of the Mitch McConnell Center at the University of Louisville. This isn't even gaslighting. It is either genuine delusion or a taunt. And it's not just the right-wing members of the court. I got to say, Justice Stephen Breyer, on a very strange book tour / maybe for farewell tour, has also been on the defensive about accusations of partisanship. In an interview with the Washington Post the day after Amy Coney Barrett's speech in Louisville, Breyer agreed with his colleague.
I do agree with what I think the approach is that she's taking there. As I've said, it takes some years, and you then gradually pick up the mores of the institution. And the mores of the institution, you're a judge. And you better be there for everybody, not just the Democrats, not just the Republicans.
I mean, as an ideal, sure. As a description, the Supreme Court has long been hostile to public scrutiny. They think they're above it. They think all this stuff that happens outside the chamber is vulgar. They don't let cameras in the courtroom, for instance, for that reason. You may have noticed we don't have much to show you when we talk about the court. It actually, to be honest, I'm breaking the fourth wall here. It makes it hard to do cable news segments about the court, and that's on purpose, to insulate themselves from the normal parry and thrust of criticism that comes in the context of a liberal democracy, what Amy Coney Barrett calls hot takes. But if there's one thing I take away from this new chorus of whining, it's that the criticism is working. So please keep it up.